What's up, my know-it-alls? This is your Wheel of Time talk. I am, of course, Mr. Know-it-all. So let's get into it. Let's talk about the show. What's up, my know-it-alls? This is Mr. Know-it-all. You've reached the Mr. Know-it-all channel. And this, of course, is Wheel of Time talk. So episode 5, Blood Calls Blood, aired on Friday on Amazon Prime. So hopefully you have your Amazon Prime accounts all ready to go and you watch this. It's actually a really good episode. Most of these episodes have been really good. I keep hearing a lot of people criticizing the fact that the show seems to be veering off from the books. I never expected to watch the show and feel like I was watching a word-for-word iteration of the book. I wouldn't want that. I've already kind of got that in my head. So all that having been said, let's go ahead and continue. So this week, Perrin and Egwene run into a familiar face. It's Child Valda of the Children of the Light. Matt and Rand see some strange ones, and Moiraine and Lan mourn their losses. Okay, so the show starts. This week's episode begins with Stepin, who is Perrin and Sedai's warder, who's carrying her to the place where they're going to be buried, and ultimately you see everybody standing around, and that's this whole opening part is really about. It isn't just about Stepin. So I've seen more than one person online criticize, like, why do we care about this? There's so many bigger events. Why are they getting rid of all this stuff from the thing and doing the other thing? Let me break something down for you. And we'll get back into the show in a second about the actual episode. 9 times out of 10, when you have to take something and translate it, you have to go to the show with an intent. Here's the thing. Robert Jordan wrote the Wheel of Time series, and he wrote it with massive amounts of information. There's the companion, which is like 1,400 pages long, that has just nothing but his notes and whatnot. I recently got it. Excellent read. It's like an encyclopedia for everything in the Wheel of Time. But my point is, he had an intent behind the things that he was putting up and laying down. Now, if you're going to try to make, like, you could do the first 4 seasons just based on what happens in book 1. But who would ever want to watch that show? Give me a nice, tight season 1 based on Eye of the World. I'm down. I'm in. So my viewpoint has always been, as we go through the series, you're getting the gist of the story in its boiled down best intent. Now, the director for the show, it's funny. She's actually an actress who used to be on a TV show called Eureka, and she directed this one. It's amazing. She's a really great director. I had no clue. Sally Richardson Whitfield. And so when you go into this episode, allow me to tell you, fan, how to understand creativity. So you love the stuff you love because the people have presented certain things the way they presented them. Now, the story of Stepin has nothing to do with the current story we're watching in the Wheel of Time. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. I guarantee you. Other than it gives us an opportunity to establish some things having to do with Lan and what's going to come. So, I'm not going to, well, spoilers, I guess. Either way, the opening part, you see this really, there's 3 storylines happening. There's Stepin and that whole situation, and ultimately Lan and how they deal with grief and whatnot. There's a second part with Perrin and Egwene where they face the Child Valda from the Children of the Light. And then there's also Rand and Mad who arrive in Caemlyn and are meeting firsthand Loial the Ogier. Which we'll get into all that stuff in just a moment. So for me, the story that they're telling isn't so much about Stepin and Perrin-Aes Sedai as much as the relationship between Warder-Aes Sedai. And this is going to play a huge part in what's coming. I guarantee you, I'm going to make a couple of quick predictions before the end of the series. We're going to get Moiraine Sedai either sacrificing herself against a Dark One or something or a Dark Friend even. We're definitely going to get Nynaeve joining the tower. We're definitely going to get, all these bits and pieces that they're laying the groundwork for. And so at the end of the day, Lan is our representation of what's going on between Warder and Aes Sedai. And he's what's called a grief bearer. Meanwhile, you have this other side where Perrin and Egwene are facing Child Valda, who happens to, and when the Children of the Light run and encounter them, they attack the Tuatha Anmir, they attack the Tinkers, if you will, and ultimately take Perrin and Egwene captive. And while doing that, he proceeds to torture Perrin. Now, in this proceeding to torture Perrin, we get Egwene coming face to face with the fact that she knows she can channel because Moiraine helped reveal that to her. But ultimately, what does that even mean? So Perrin has to, in essence, Child Valda is making a couple of assumptions. He's assuming that Egwene is an Aes Sedai, and he's assuming that Perrin is her warder. Not a far cry from what could possibly be true. I can see him why he might make that leap. He makes the statement that, the light doesn't do anything by coincidence, and so that's why they've encountered him twice and whatever else. But that whole scenario really begins to open the gates for Perrin's ultimate transformation. I will say this. If you haven't read the books, then you kind of are lost. And that is a shortcoming of the series. I have a feeling that the producers of the series, people who are trying to tell the story they're trying to tell, the problem is they're trying to grab information and grab pieces, and they're not laying enough groundwork. So, for instance, we've spent so much time dealing with Perrin's belly aching over a magic wife who shouldn't exist. I say shouldn't exist because she was in the book. She's a completely original character for the series, and I don't know why she was invented. The reason is we are missing out completely on his evolution. So instead, we get this scene in this episode where Perrin suddenly has gold eyes showing up. What does that even mean? We've had no groundwork laid that this is coming or that anything remotely like this is happening. So this kind of comes as somewhat of a surprise. Now they can say, oh, we conjectured because there were wolves and stuff like in the past and they didn't attack him and whatever else. It's lazy writing, people. Anyway, but again, not a shortcoming of the show as much as just, it is a shortcoming of the show. Whatever. Either way, I'm still here for it. I think that the series is doing. I'm enjoying it. So then you get into Mat and Rand who arrive. There's a brief interchange where Mat sees Logain being brought into the city, and Logain apparently laughs because I guess crazy knows crazy, and or as they say, the blood calls to the blood. But the truth is that I don't know if that's in Logain's head or Matt's head. Either way, I don't necessarily know if that full-on laugh thing actually happens. I think it's one of those things where we're not getting we're seeing inside somebody's head. I think it might be Matt's. So Rand, while looking around through some stuff, encounters a book, specifically the Caerthian Cycle, which is their version of prophecies. Prophecies specifically having to do with the Dragon Reborn. Throughout the series, the book series, the Caerthian leather. No, the Caerthian or Caerthian prophecies are writings or whatever, the cycle, if you will, are noted many, many times throughout the series. Really, I'm really kind of looking forward to seeing some of those references. In the books, there is a lot of times where people talk about or every chapter rather opens sometimes with a quote. Maybe even just the book itself will open with a quote from the Caerthian Cycle, and sometimes it has to do with what's going on. So I know that when they introduce later on, there's a group called the Shan that'll be introduced, which is another people from across the ocean or whatever. They have a lot of Caerthian Cycle type quotes in their sections. So I'm excited to see kind of how the show is going to handle some of that. But while he finds this, he happens to meet Loial. Loial is not an ogre, but an Ogier. The Ogier are a much larger race. Now, my best friend Jason had an issue with Loial. He was like, he looks a little small. I thought he was going to be bigger. Loial's always in the books described as being smaller than most Ogier, so I won't pass judgment on his height and size until I see them how they represent other Ogier. So I know that he's very cool. They always describe him as having big sausage fingers, which he totally does. Also, they talk very slow because everybody knows who's a big fan. Ogier themselves are very slow and purposeful. If anything's worth doing, they almost remind you of the tree people, like Treebeard and whatnot from Lord of the Rings. Anything worth doing is worth talking about and worth kind of really thinking long and hard about or preparing for. And whereas Rand's like, all right, I gotta go, I gotta do this, I gotta do the other. Loial's like, you are always in such a rush and blah, blah. It's really fun how he talks. I love it. I love the whole characterization. There is a weird part where all of a sudden, out of nowhere, Loial shows up at Rand's place, at the place where he's staying, and is like, "Hey, by the way, I found your friend, and here's Nynaeve." And you're like, I remember I was kind of like, wait a minute, what? Did I miss a scene somewhere? Anyway, it wasn't bad. I would have liked to have seen a little more of Tom, considering Tom's the one who points them toward Caemlyn, and specifically that one inn. But either way, it's not too shabby. I kind of enjoyed it. So I liked the episode. The episode had a lot of parallels going on. I mean, you see fun stuff between Leandra and Moiraine, and you kind of see this game, this cat and mouse game that they're playing. Moiraine's actually from, I believe, she's either Gildanon or I can't remember exactly where she's from. She's from someplace that's familiar with what they call the Game of Houses. The Game of Houses is specifically, or is that Kyrian? I think it might be Kyrian. Anyway, I'm sorry, I can't remember right this second. Either way, it's a fun exploration of how the character is going to ultimately. She's very good at playing chess. That whole moving parts around and pieces and whatnot. Overall, I liked the episode. It establishes some really neat things. I loved the entire funeral scene at the end with Stepin after he commits suicide and Lan finds him, and they give Lan the task of mourning. This was very special for me, only because in the extra, there's a look behind the inside the episode. They talk about how the actor talks about how Daniel Henley talks about how Lan is not emotional. Lan is it's like talking to a brick wall. And so for him to have to show emotion, the only place he could go to is a place of wanting to just shout and scream. But it's not that corny movie scream where it's like, no, up into the air or something. But as he's screaming, you find out that this whole ceremony is based on, there is the griever. And everyone gives their grief, emotionally speaking, to the griever. Well, Lan is the griever in this instance. And they all start thudding their chests, and it's like boom, boom, boom. And you can almost see almost like a shock. It's so loud, it's so strong. And then I'm watching it with my wife, you see Moiraine. And Moiraine has just tears streaming down her face. And I told my wife, I said, you realize through their bond, she sees and feels everything he's feeling. She feels what he can't express. And I'm like, that makes that moment all the more genuine for me, because it's like she can't hold back what he's really feeling. The real reason this was special for me is my son could not handle emotion well. And so whether he was happy or he was sad, he would cry. So it was one of those things where when I seeing Lan having to deal with almost the confusion of how do I handle these emotions, I was super impressed. So really good episode. I probably would, if I had to give this episode out of a score, I'd probably say a 7 out of 10. I don't know if it was a 10 out of 10, but 7 out of 10. I enjoyed it. I enjoy the story they're telling. And as someone who's been in the film industry, I understand where they're going. And as someone who's a fan of the books, I'm enjoying the heck out of the series. A lot of negative stuff online. I wouldn't believe any of the hype. Always be your own. Hey, everybody loves to know it all, and always be your own judge about those things. So anyway, so that's the episode. That's episode 5, Blood Calls Blood of the Wheel of Time. And now you know. And if knowing's half the battle, then you, my friends, are on your way to being a fellow know-it-all. So check out our other videos. Join us each week for a live weekend review. And we're also going to talk a whole lot more about the show. Again, every single episode as it drops. Also check out our Hawkeye reviews as well as some other things we're talking about. So until next time, take care, everybody. And don't forget, everybody loves a know-it-all.